Welcome to Story Talks, where we discuss the practices that engage, motivate, develop, retain, and attract people to businesses. We'll give you principles and tools based on real-world stories to leverage listening and storytelling to become a better leader and management professional. Story Talks is produced by Narativ, a company that focuses on personal storytelling for business.
Welcome to Story Talks and Happy New Year. I'm Jerome DeRoy, your host as always with Julienne and Ryan. And it's just the two of us today. We thought we would welcome everybody into this new year, 2022, and wish you all well and talk a little bit about what we've learned over the holidays and what we might have to look forward to for this podcast and other things as well. So, Julienne, as always, great to see you.
Thank you. Same here. So I did some homework when we were tossing around what we were going to talk about, and I realized I didn't know the root of New Year's resolutions, and I was wondering, like, who started that? Now, I grew up with going to Catholic school. I said it must be nuns or something that came up with this, but it's not. It goes back as far as the Babylonians, 4,000 years ago. They were making resolutions, and they were making it with their gods and saying, they were doing a trade-off, like I'll give you something if you give me this, basically. So they were bargaining. And then when Julius Caesar came into action and made January 1st the beginning of the year, they start to use that in the language. So it's been around for a while. Now, I'm not saying everybody's kept them, but it's been around for a while that people have been attempting to start each year with some resolution. But I know we're pushing back on that today.
So. That's right. Well, thanks for that piece of history. I wasn't aware of that. I think pushing back a little bit on it, because I always get the sense that it's the question that always comes back when you get to the end of the year is what's your resolution going to be for the beginning of the year and the whole year. And what I often find is that, and I think gym owners know this very well, it's like there's a huge amount of memberships and subscription increases in January, but then after that it tumbles down again, and you sort of go back to the ways you were doing things before. And so the resolutions don't really stick. But there is a word that I think is important, and we use a lot in our methodology and the way that we do things, is the word intention. And so I started to think about what's intention versus resolution, and what does it mean to come up with an intention and show up with that intention. And to me, that's the biggest difference, is that when you intend for something and you create that intention, you're essentially telling yourself to show up as something. So the thing that I wanted to leave with our listeners today and to talk to you about and hear your thoughts on is that particular is about that word intention, meaning something that you show up as. So for example, if I say, my intention is joy, that means that I'm showing up with that for somebody else. And also, taking it a little bit further, I'm listening for that. So that when somebody's talking to me, if we enter into a dialogue, you and I, like we're doing now, and I show up with that word joy, then I'm listening for that. Everything you're saying to me occurs to me as joyful. And because I'm looking for that, I'm listening for it. And so I think if we can sort of think about what's going to be our intention for 2022, how do we want to show up? That to me seems more doable, because it's not necessarily, the great thing about intention, I think, is that it's not tied to the obligation of an action. So whereas a resolution, it is all about action. It's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to, go to the gym. I'm going to spend more time with my kids and, all that stuff. Or I'm going to work more, or work less, whatever it is. But there's an action that's tied to it. Whereas an intention, it's simply a way of being and showing up that way. And the trick with it is that the more you show up the way you intend to, the more actions are going to come up that you're going to take that are going to reinforce that intention, as opposed to not having an intention and kind of letting the habits take over. So I'm always listening for criticism, or I'm always listening for a loophole, or I'm listening for the moment that I can speak, that I'll be able to make my point. So that's what I wanted to kind of leave people with today and start us off with.
Yeah. So less list making, because I always feel like those can be a bit disheartening. And not only was I researching the history of this tradition, I was also researching the statistics, and that most people can get through the week, kind of sort of keeping that list or the one or two things. By the end of the week, 75% are like off the grid and they're done. So I think it's more fluid and it's less negative, because it's kind of your guiding principle and saying like, well, today before I got on, I had every mechanical thing go wrong, and I was like, put it into perspective. What's the gift? What else can I be doing well besides muttering and reacting like a good New Yorker, to just get past it? So I'm making that intention not to make that situation that I experienced before the whole driving force of the day, and change the mood and change everything. I was like, okay, I can use this in a talk or use it someplace else. But you're right, making an intention of how we're going to show up, I think, is so important now more than ever, when there's so many variables out there that can really impact our mood or how we're communicating with others.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I think that's great. Anything that you've learned over the holidays, or things that you've noticed during this break?
Ooh, I want to raise my hand. Yes, I had a good conversation with somebody I'm going to be working with and their group, and the person was committed to creating memorable moments and acknowledging what their staff did to be awesome. And they're doing it as a story sharing and acknowledgement, and a series of, not just one afternoon, a series of moments they're getting together. And I thought that was incredible. So I promised her, and I meant to tell you about that before we got on, but to say they deserve a shout out, because that is something, before we go delving into, okay, here's coming up the pike, everything that's working, not working, to do a look back and just acknowledge what their peers did that was worthy of remembering and talking about. So, it's not about winning. Yes, somebody at the end of the day is going to get an award, or the group's going to get an award, but it's about all those moments where each quarter is going to get acknowledged. And I think that's fabulous. It's not that expensive. And, those people will have a video and they'll be able to talk about it, and they'll be able to use it as learning tools. So that's my memorable moment, literally.
Yeah, I love it. And I, of course, it's a great opportunity to talk about storytelling, because, how do you convey those memorable moments? Through stories. And like you said, it doesn't take much, right? You create a video, you make it part of how you take stock of things. I think too often, you've really made a great point here, because too often we sort of see, the numbers. That's how we take stock. Okay, here are our quarterly numbers. Here are annual numbers. Now that's what we're going to look at in a month or so. What was 2021 like? And then we go from there to say what we learned and what our strategy is going to be going forward, right? In order to increase those numbers or change those numbers in some way. And we forget that the stories carry so much emotional information, and it's what makes things stick. So those memorable moments, if you juxtapose those to the numbers and all the strategies that are going to be put in place, then it's that people are just going to remember that. They're going to remember those moments, but they're also going to remember, like, oh yeah, that's so and so who did this last year. Let's build on that. And that's why now we're doing this, so that our future story will look something a little bit like, maybe what someone said in the past, or maybe it'll be something completely different. But again, the idea of using storytelling to both take stock and look to the future is not something that we often think about in terms of the use and purpose of storytelling. But I think it's a good reminder, right? And it doesn't take much. Memorable moments. What was memorable in 2021? I'm sure people can go with at least 5 stories.
And another fun fact that I can pivot into this is January of the Roman root. I did not take Latin, trust me, but it was Janus, where you look backwards and you look forwards, which I
Mm,
think is a great thinking prompt for all of us to make our
mm,
list and think, what kept me really busy last year, and where was my high moments, and whether you record it on film or in a photo or in a notes, to take a moment and just look at it before you get too far ahead of yourself, because you might have a lot of things that we forget. It's
yeah.
been a blur. When you said 21 versus 20, I was like, really? It's starting to blend a little bit the last 2 years. So taking a moment
Yeah.
back and enjoying it,
Yeah.
and also saying that took, whatever it was, whether it took some bravery, whether it took some endurance, just write it down and just
Mm.
keep it on file for yourself.
Yes, don't just do to-dos. Do
Mm.
also the stories and the memorable ones. And I love that idea. And I think we can leave people with this: is the idea of looking back and looking forwards, and that's what January is all about. I'm going to make that my month of January. That's exactly what I'm going to do this month. I'm going to be looking back to 2021, and I'm going to be looking forward to 2022 and what we're going to be doing in February and more. And on that note, I want to leave our listeners with some idea of what's coming down the pike,
Mm.
and because we have some outreach going on for new guests, and one of those guests is the CEO of an organization that we've worked with a lot at Narativ, and you'll hear much more about that when she comes onto the show. But essentially, we're going to talk about her journey from just having an idea 11 or 12 years ago now
Mm.
to then where she is today with an organization of more than 50, 60 people and growing still, with backing from the likes of Zuckerberg and Laureen Powell
Mm.
Jobs and other people like that. So stay tuned for that. And we're constantly looking for guests as well. So if our listeners have any ideas for that, and if there are people, Julienne, that you are thinking of right now and are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that could be an interesting person to have on the podcast, well, of course,
I am.
we'll take that. Yeah, great.
And the thing we're always learning about stories, it's portable. We've learned how to navigate these screens. We've created environments for people. So we're all wrestling with in-person and hybrids. But this works no matter where you are, whether you're in a rectangle or where you're in person. So,
Yeah.
think about that. It's a great tool to keep employing it and really addressing bigger issues as you go. But it's all about connecting.
Great, beautiful
That's my
words.
thing.
Well, great. Well, on that note, this is the end of this episode, and I wish everyone well for the new year, and may it be a healthy, happy, and prosperous one for all of you listening, and everyone beyond. And I really look forward to having more of these in 2022 and inviting guests onto our podcast, and just talk more about the value of listening and storytelling and how it applies to business. So thanks again, Julienne, for being with me on this journey.
Yes, always a pleasure. Take care and be well, everyone.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Narrative Story Talks. For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narativ.com.